Dementia. Her voice, a ghostly whisper, drifts from the bedroom. "Who's there?" she asks, and I, already accustomed to this game, slam the door loudly, as if to wake her from a sleep she has long been lost in. "It's probably Nikita," she replies. "He's the only one who comes here." The words progressive dementia, constantly uttered by my mother, hang over us like storm clouds. It's been 10 years since I last saw her. My parents decided that I shouldn't witness this, that I shouldn't go through this pain. At that time, it made me glad. I was happy to be free of this heavy burden. But now, returning from the army, I feel pangs of guilt. I remember her warm embrace, her genuine joy whenever I visited her in the summer. She shuffles towards me, leaning on her cane as if it were her last support in this world. Her gray hair spills over her shoulders like snow covering autumn fields. Her dressing gown, with a prickly sweater pulled over it, seems to symbolize her fading life. In her wrinkled face, a spark of joy still flickers. Her front teeth gleam gold like the last rays of the setting sun. "Nikita, I told you. He's the only one who visits, only him, my little Nikita." Her eyes, once bright and lively, are now dull and empty, reflecting the void she's sinking into. But her voice is still familiar, still warm and dear to my ears. It's almost a 2-hour drive to her place, the road winding through a gray, desolate landscape, village streets where time seems to have stopped. My mother and sister give me instructions on how to care for her, but their words sound empty and lifeless, as if they've already accepted her departure. The kitchen smells of oregano and mint, her favorite herbs. I sip my tea cautiously, checking the taste, because she might mistakenly put salt instead of sugar. "Look at the pancakes I made," she says, pushing a plate towards me. Her hands tremble like leaves in the wind. Through the window I see the neighboring houses, old, darkened by time, with rickety fences. The apple and bird cherry trees in the front garden seem to pity her. "Grandma, whose cat is that?" I ask, because she needs to be engaged, forced to think. "Oh, Nikita, that's Riza Andreevna's cat. She lives 2 houses down, right there. You can see her porch from here, see?" she says. A faint smile lights up her face, as if she remembers something pleasant. She remembers everything about the neighbors, about their lives, about her past life. But her memories are becoming increasingly muddled, as if a fog is descending on her mind. She talks about Uncle Vova, about Riza Andreevna, who killed her husband. She argues with herself, as if trying to grasp the tale of a fading past. The signs aren't numerous, but they're there. The absent-mindedness that makes her put her shoes in the fridge, salt in her tea, dirty dishes on the shelves. The strange questions she asks out of context. Her conversations with herself, which are becoming increasingly illogical. But she can still take care of herself. She can cook, dress, even go out into the garden. The main thing is that she is not alone, that someone is there, so that she does not get lost in this world of eternally fading memories. I tidy up the room. She could do it herself, but I want her to tire herself as little as possible. I ask her about the neighbor who brought the sour cream, about her daughter. I ask her about the rain, to make her think, to make her remember. I see how she's fading, how her mind is gradually slipping away from her. It's sad, but I try to find beauty in her fading, in her tenderness, in her love that still flickers in her aging heart. Children's laughter comes through the open window. She asks, "What's that, Nikita?" I see children stealing cherries from her bush. "The neighbor's kids," I say. "They were stealing your cherries." "Do they have faces?" she asks. "Who?" I ask. "The children. Do they have faces?" she repeats. Her eyes no longer see the children. She doesn't see the world around her. She sees only her own memories, which are becoming an increasingly blurred and frightening picture. "Of course they do," I say. "Of course they do. Of course they do. It's still daytime. Their faces disappear after sunset," she says. And humming something to herself, she goes back to the kitchen. I am left alone in this empty, cold house where life departed long ago. Time flows swiftly like a mountain stream carrying its waters towards the unknown. Summer days merge into one continuous flow, and I've gotten used to this unchanging rhythm. The bumpy ride in the minibus, the dusty streets, Grandma's house, it's all become a part of my new reality. And I can no longer walk past Riza Andreevna's fence without peeking into her garden. Weeds and wild raspberries have filled it, as if trying to consume the remnants of life. Only a small patch with potatoes looks tended, like an island in a raging sea. And I rack my brains, trying to imagine how one could bury a body in this overgrown place. I want to ask the locals what happened to Uncle Vova, but I don't know anyone here. My childhood friends have scattered around the world, and approaching their parents feels awkward. Grandma, where's your bathrobe? I ask, laying bananas and apples on the table. The terry cloth one? The green one? I loved rubbing my cheek against it as a child when you carried me in your arms. It wore out, Nikita, wore out, replies Grandma, lost in thought. Things aren't eternal. Nothing is eternal. A noise comes from the living room, and I rush there to look out the window. The children are hanging on the fence again, picking berries from the cherry tree. I try to make out their faces, but all I see is the blonde nape of a boy's neck and the red braid of a girl. They run away as if pursued by an invisible enemy, and I begin to doubt, did I see their faces back then the first time? Grandma enters the room. She stands in the middle of the living room like a ghost from the past. The bathrobe didn't wear out, she says, her eyes clouded. They stole it. And immediately contradicts herself. No, I burned it along with other unnecessary things ages ago. That was a different one with the bees, and the green one was stolen. They came at night and stole it. Who would steal it? She asks, her voice unsure. Well, they come here, at night, and take things. She falls silent, her body seemingly losing its support. Her mouth hangs slightly open, gold teeth gleaming, wrinkled fingers clutching the cane. I need to bring some water, she says after a minute, her gaze clearing. Nikita, will you bring some water, and I'll make you some tea? And I go to the water pump, my head filled with scary thoughts. What if someone really does come at night and takes her things? Or is it just another figment of her aging mind? I look at the sleepy village. Old people sit on benches, fuss in their gardens, as if trying to hold back time. The young have already left for the city, leaving them in this dying place. The forest begins beyond the water pump. I listen to the water drumming in the bucket. My gaze wanders among the branches, and I see something strange, a camouflage hunting jacket. A tall, bearded man is hiding in the thicket, like a predator ready to pounce. Noticing me, he flinches and disappears among the trees. Hey, I shout, who are you? There's no answer. Only the rustling of leaves responds to my question. And I am left alone, with a feeling of incomprehensible fear and anxiety. What is happening in this sleepy village? Who is hiding in the shadows of the trees? And what will happen next? For the next few weeks, I spend most of my time in the living room, waiting for the berry thieves with a simple and unnerving goal, to see their faces, to make sure they have them. Grandma, when is my birthday? I ask, wiping the windowsills. March 6th, Nikitushka, she answers from the kitchen, bustling about the stove. If you only knew how your mother suffered giving birth to you. She said then that she would never give birth to anyone again. But she said the same after your sister, so we were expecting her to have a third. But somehow it didn't happen. Kept her word, it seems. The air smells of dough. The hiss of boiling oil can be heard. Washing the dirt from the window frame, I look up at the cherry tree again and again. The little rascals, as if aware of my intention, have deliberately stopped coming. I click my tongue in annoyance, casting a wary glance towards the forest. What if that strange man appears? He, too, hasn't been seen since that day. Grandma, does a man live here? With a black beard? Not exactly old, well, average, tall. Maybe he does, Nikita, but who could possibly identify someone from such a description? There are only 30 houses here. How many tall men with beards can there be? Well, Sarah's husband had a beard, but here, everyone and their dog has a beard. After a short pause, she asks, did you know that Sarah sewed her husband up? I clench my teeth silently, expecting another repetition of the old story, but then a crash comes from the kitchen. I rush there, anxiety tightening my throat. The frying pan lies in a corner, hot oil spills over the old floorboards, half-fried piroshki are scattered everywhere. Grandmother, startled, presses her hands to her mouth, and I examine her, looking for burns or injuries. I'm all right, she waves me off. My elbow hit the pan, that's all. I'll clean it up. I'll clean it, I say, breathing a sigh of relief. You go and lie down, take a rest. From Grandma's bedroom, the voices from the old television can be heard. Some sage is proclaiming that every day we learn something new. I can't argue with that. Today, for example, my lesson is that scrubbing oil off old floorboards is much harder than it seems, not to mention the stuck raw dough. I lose track of time, kneeling with a brush, so I'm very surprised when Grandma asks, "Nikitushka, aren't you going to be late for the bus?" I glance at the wall clock, and indeed I am. "Grandma, I think I've cleaned up here," I say, getting up. "I'll check again tomorrow. Maybe I missed something, but now I have to run." Rustling and giggling come from the living room window. Breathlessly, I rush there and see the same boy and girl habitually perched on the fence. Without wasting a second, I throw open the window and jump out into the garden, and they immediately take off running, again showing nothing but the backs of their heads. Cursing like an old sailor, I scramble over the fence and chase after them with the speed of a cheetah. Bewilderment washes over me in a cold wave. What kind of a circus is this? This whole nonsense with the faces is definitely not worth getting so worked up about. I think I'm the one going crazy, not Grandma. I only managed to catch up with them at the end of the street. I grab the girl by the shoulder and turn her towards me, while the boy disappears behind some fences. I exhale. There is a face, an upturned freckled nose, wide open green eyes, a mouth open in fright. But the confusion doesn't leave, and I look back at the forest. The sun hangs low above the treetops, not hurrying to disappear. Sunset. I have to wait for the sun to set. "Why are you scare the child?" A shrill voice rings out, and I flinch, releasing the girl. On the porch of the nearest house, a tall, bony old woman stands with her hands on her hips, looking menacing. "If I see you picking on the weak again, I'll wring your neck," she says loudly. "Did you get that?" And she answers herself, "Yes, of course he did. Look how pale he's gone." I gape at her, uncomprehending, and the girl tugs at my sleeve, pointing towards Grandma's house. "Look in the attic, we saw." And she runs off. The old woman disappears into her house, grumbling angrily, and I stand there trying to figure out what's going on. It's as if a puzzle of 1,000 bright pieces has shattered in my head, and I can't put it back together. I need to ask Grandma. She'll explain everything. But here I am, back at the house. The path leads past the side porch, which leads to the attic. I instinctively look around, like a boy up to mischief, and nimbly climb the wooden beams nailed to the wall. The movements are familiar, honed over the years. I've taken this path hundreds of times in my childhood. The attic greets me with semi-darkness and a musty smell. Dust is everywhere. Old boxes, rotten through, are covered with mold. Mountains of rags enlarge into a monotonous dark mass. Dried bird droppings crunch unpleasantly underfoot. The air is heavy, stale. Every breath brings a bitter taste to my mouth. Through the cracks in the roof, the rays of the setting sun break through, painting everything around in a wavering yellowish light. I move cautiously forward, examining the forgotten things that have turned to dust over time. Nothing remarkable. Nothing I haven't seen before. I'm about to go down, shaking my head in disappointment, when I notice something in the far corner that catches my eye. Squinting incredulously, I approach and freeze, feeling my heart begin to race. It's Grandma's green robe, the very same one. I sit down next to it, hesitantly reaching out my hand. A thick layer of dust covers the fabric, but my fingers still recognize the familiar softness. How many years has it been since I last touched these sleeves, this collar? And then, under the fabric, I feel something solid. I flinch, only now making out the dirty yellow bones protruding from beneath the hem of the robe. Femurs. I swallow the lump in my throat with difficulty. With unsure movements, I begin to rake away the debris piled on top of the robe. Rotten books, leaky rubber boots, and pieces of burnt curtains fly to the sides. A dense curtain of dust rises. Tears well up in my eyes, my throat burns, but I continue until I realize the robe is draped over a half-decomposed skeleton. The left hand is just a collection of phalanges. The ribs have collapsed inwards. The skull stares blankly into the void with dark sockets. The front gold teeth gleam especially brightly in the rays of the setting sun. It's Grandma. I grip my teeth, straightening up abruptly. It's getting dark in my eyes. Cold grips me from the inside, depriving me of the ability to move. This can't be. I just saw her in the house. The familiar creak of floorboards comes from downstairs. Has Nikita left already? He's gone. He didn't even come to say goodbye, bolted out of here like a scalded cat. Young people, always in a hurry. Let them rush if they're pressed for time. Those who have their whole lives ahead of them can always afford to be late. I hear a shuffling, the light tap of a cane on the floorboards. A chair creaked in the kitchen. Someone sat down. Then, silence. It's almost completely dark in the attic. Finally, I decide to sneak to the exit. My heart is pounding so loudly that it seems the whole village can hear it. Fear, confusion, complete lack of understanding. Through this haze breaks a single thought. Run. Run without looking back, and then figure out what's going on. Call for help. Going downstairs, I freeze in place. The sunset is still glowing over the forest, but directly above me the sky is already darkening. The first stars are appearing. Dusk is descending on the village. A dim light flickers in the kitchen window. Strange, not electrical. I cautiously creep closer and peek inside. A candle, its paraffin melted, burns on the table. Grandma sits motionless, bent over the flickering flame, and she has no face, only smooth skin, no eyes, no lips, no nose. I back away silently, barely suppressing the urge to run and scream at the top of my lungs. My vision is blurred, but I can make out that the same light is burning in every house. Candles are lit everywhere. Passing by Raisa Andreevna's gate, I involuntarily stop and look into the window. She, like Grandma, sits at the table, and the candle illuminates a face erased like with an eraser, framed by disheveled gray hair. I turn around at a rustle behind me and freeze. On the porch of the house opposite stand the same boy and girl who were stealing cherries. Only there are no freckles, no green eyes. Empty spaces gape in place of their faces. Stretched out like strings, the children point at me motionless, as if trying to attract someone's attention. A cry or a gasp escapes me, and I break into a run. Windows with dim lights flash before my eyes, muddy puddles splatter under my feet, the air burns my lungs. Soon, trees replace the houses, and it dawns on me with a delay that in my panic I've turned towards the forest. Which means I have to go back to get to the road, and there are the windows, and the candles, and those kids, and the people in the houses, and... Noticing movement among the pines in the darkness, I break into a run again, but immediately freeze, stopped by a sharp, hoarse shout. Stop! Someone is walking straight at me, holding a long, incomprehensible object in their outstretched hands. Gasping for breath, I strain my eyes, trying to make out at least something, and with difficulty recognize the bearded man from the forest in the approaching figure. He's holding a rifle. The mere sight of its barrel pointed at my chest makes me want to sink through the ground. Coming closer, the man asks in amazement, "They didn't take you? What do you mean? Your face is still there, so they didn't take you? Take me where?" He examines me from head to toe for a long time, then frowns suspiciously. "Did they notice you?" "Who?" "Any of those. You have to hide from them after sunset." "Did they notice you?" I'm asking. "If they did, you have to be killed immediately." The same thought is hammering dully in my head. Don't kill. Don't kill. Don't kill. Don't. Why are you silent? Did anyone notice you? No, they didn't. Pleased with the answer, the man lowers the rifle. I let out a sigh of relief. "Your name is Nikita, right?" he asks unexpectedly. "I remember you as a snot-nosed kid throwing stones at my dog. I saw you by the well then, recognized you immediately." And then I recognize him. "Uncle Vova? Is that you, Raisa Andreevna's husband? You didn't have a beard before, that's why I didn't recognize you. I thought some madman was wandering around the forest. Why don't you live at home? Grandma says Raisa killed you and buried you in the garden, and I looked there and..." He interrupts my flurry of words. "She didn't kill me. She's the one buried there, my Rechka." In the flickering light of the stars, I see his overgrown eyebrows, like furry caterpillars, furrow. I look back at the village. Through the foliage, the orange dots of windows peek through, motionless fireflies in the night darkness. "What's going on here?" I ask. "I just found a skeleton in the attic, and it has teeth like Grandma's and a robe like Grandma's, and she's sitting in the kitchen. And your Raisa isn't buried either. She's also sitting in the kitchen. Only they don't have faces?" Uncle Vova grins grimly. "That's because it's not your grandma there, and it's not my Rachka. They died a long time ago. Everyone in the village died a long time ago." After a long pause, I object in a weak voice. "They're alive during the day. During the day, they think they're alive. They're not dangerous during the day. I even go to talk to Raisa sometimes, and I almost believe it's her. I want to believe it so badly, you understand? And at night it takes their faces to see and feel everything they saw and felt during the day. And they sit in front of candles, praying, maybe. It's some kind of ritual they have. What do you mean it? It's a deity. It's all because of it. Glancing at my bewildered face, Uncle Vova sighs. Long story short, Raisa and I took in this kid, fed him, put him to bed, thought we'd take him to the city in the morning, hand him over to the police, let them deal with him. At night, Raisa wakes me up, and this kid is sitting in the corner in front of a candle, with no face and pointing at us. Scary, huh? You bet, I say cautiously, remembering the kids on the porch. That's when I realized that it wasn't a human at all, but some kind of fiend from hell, a real demon. I grabbed my rifle, shot him right in the head. He, of course, died instantly, but some kind of terrible force burst out of him. It was chaos. The walls shook. Some kind of evil was destroying and breaking everything. We ran, and it attacked Raisa, tore her to shreds in an instant. I broke free and ran all night to the city without stopping. By morning I got there, went straight to the police. I went back with them, and here. What about here? Nothing. The kid was gone, and my Rechka was bustling about the house, baking pies. At least the cops weren't angry, told me to drink less, or else the squirrels would come back, and then they left. Otherwise, I'd be in a mental hospital now. And Raisa, I realized that same day that something was wrong. Talking to herself, asking stupid questions, well, she went crazy. That's when I grabbed my rifle and went into the forest. We have a hunting lodge there, a few kilometers away. We built it with the guys when we were young. I've been living there ever since. I watch the village at night so that this filth doesn't spread any further. What do you mean, spread? Literally, kid. If this faceless thing notices you at night, it will point you out to the deity. And the deity will come after sunset and take you. It'll kill you and hide you. Everyone here has been laid to rest like that. Some buried in the garden, some gathering dust in the attic, some rotting in the cellar. And then the deity will create a copy of you, exactly the same, with all your memories, and this copy will live your life. And wander around at night without a face. Get it? The whole village is teeming with them. It only took 3 years for this creature to replace everyone, and they don't even suspect a thing, you understand? They think they're alive, and during the day you can't tell them apart from the living, if it weren't for these glitches. Stupid questions, talking to themselves, well, you get it. They're messed up in the head, it's a nightmare. But you said that boy pointed at you at night? Why didn't the deity take you? I told you, if they notice you, you have to kill them immediately. Kill them right away, and nothing will happen to you. I shot that kid then, so the deity switched to Rachka, because she didn't do anything, and she didn't have time to run away. I feel my brain being kneaded like dough, my thoughts are tangled, questions swarming in my head, not letting me concentrate, make sense of this delirium. But if you're making sure this infection doesn't spread, why did it spread to the whole village? The village can't be saved, kid. If I had, after that night, well, when I came back with the cops in the morning, killed Raisa too, then it would have all been over. Because she was, you could say, the last one. But it was too late when I figured it all out. If you kill them, shoot them, or cut them, they will die, of course. But at the same time, some kind of evil storm breaks out and destroys everything. And you'll be lucky if you manage to get away from it. So I'm preventing the spread in a different way. I'm making sure they don't infect new people. Well, those who come to visit. And if they do? I ask quietly. Uncle Vova strokes the barrel of his rifle. Then the infected person has to be taken care of before sunset, before the deity claims them. I swallow with difficulty, involuntarily taking a step back. And how many have you taken care of? None, he smiles. So far, in all these years, none of the visitors have stayed overnight. And why would they? They come, visit, show that they haven't forgotten, and hurry back. But if someone stays overnight and they point at them, that's when I'll bam bam, and the infected person will go home in the morning, and there'll be no stopping it, you understand? In the silvery moonlight, I see his eyes gleam oily. His movements are jerky, sharp. The corner of his mouth twitches. 10 years living in the forest, watching over this village full of monsters at night, a sure way to end up in a mental hospital. Goosebumps run down my spine, and I catch myself thinking that I shouldn't take his every word at face value. Yes, something is clearly wrong here, but blindly believing the ravings of a madman is not the best way out. First, I need to get out of here, escape as far away as possible, and then think. Looking at the swaying heavy barrel of the rifle, I say, "Uncle Vova, I want to go home." He scratches his beard and asks, "Are you sure no one noticed you? No one pointed at you?" "I'm sure, Uncle Vova." "Then let's go. If we go that way, along the edge of the forest, we can get to the road without going through the village. And then you can hitchhike, although what hitchhiking? No one drives here at this hour. You'll have to walk. Are you coming?" "I'm coming," I nod readily. We walk around the village in about 20 minutes, but this time stretches for me like rubber. On one side is the crazy Uncle Vova, and on the other are the ugly little houses with their orange eyes. It's hard to suppress the growing feeling that dozens of doors will swing open at any moment, and faceless doppelgangers will rush at us like rabid dogs. When the silhouette of a lopsided bus stop appears in the darkness, I almost jump for joy. Uncle Vova stops, casts a glance at the village, and says, "Well, that's it. You can handle it from here. Most importantly, remember this. If you ever want to visit your grandma, do it during the day. And remember that it's not really your grandma anymore. But if you want to, I understand." Nodding goodbye, I walk away. My flip-flops slap against the broken asphalt, and in my head, emptiness, cold and endless. Not a single thought lingers. Each one flies into the abyss, disappearing without a trace. There are no feelings, no desires, only an irresistible urge to get as far away as possible, hide, curl up in a ball, and forget about everything. Maybe if I forget, it will all disappear. I look back. Uncle Vova is gone, and the windows are still lit. I open my eyes wide. Something huge is hovering in the darkness above the roofs, betraying itself only by slight, lazy movements, reminiscent of the flapping fins of an exotic fish. Dense and viscous like tar, it is blacker than the night itself. I can't make it out properly, but I'm sure it has many faces, and each of its hundreds of eyes is looking at me right now. I turn away, quickening my pace almost to a run, although I understand I'm not late for anything anymore.